Gus and the Secret Slippers. Once upon a time, in a little old shed at the edge of the forest, lived a little mouse named Gus. Gus was not like other mice. Other mice liked to sneak crumbs, scurry about and squeak loudly in the night. But Gus liked to eat, yes, and sleep, yes. But most of all, Gus loved to make things. He sewed tiny blankets from scraps. He knitted scarves with bits of wool. He patched holes in pockets and hems. If something was torn, Gus's paws could stitch it back together. Gus wasn't alone, of course. He had two best pals, Pip and Nib. Pip was quick and clever, always darting here and there. Nib was small and shy, but he had sharp little teeth that could gnaw through anything. Together, the three mice made the best of friends. And best of all, Gus had a very special human friend too. Her name was Cinderella. Cinderella didn't live in the grand part of the house anymore. Her father had passed away, and her stepmother and stepsisters had taken everything. Now, Cinderella lived in a shabby shack outside, and she worked all day doing chores. She swept the floors until her hands ached. She scrubbed the pots until they shone. She carried heavy buckets of water, and often her dresses tore and ripped. But Cinderella never scolded or shouted. She was always kind. She told Gus stories of faraway lands, of mountains that touched the sky, oceans that sparkled like jewels, and cities full of lights. Gus would listen with wide eyes and twitching whiskers, and every time her dress ripped, he would stitch it back together with neat little stitches. Gus's home was very special too. He slept inside one of Cinderella's old shoes. It was the prettiest shoe she had ever owned from when she was a little girl. No one wore it anymore, but Gus cleaned it, padded it, and kept it safe. To him, it was the finest bed in the world. For 1 whole year, Gus was keeping a secret. He had been working on a gift for his dearest friend, Cinderella. He was making her a new pair of slippers. They were not ordinary slippers. They were stitched from soft, silvery cloth he had found in the attic. They were lined with tiny pearls that had once fallen from a necklace. And the thread? The thread shone golden in the sunlight. Every night when the house was quiet, Gus worked on the slippers, and now they were nearly finished. He planned to give them to Cinderella on her birthday. One morning, the town crier announced exciting news. The prince was holding a grand ball at the palace. "Every young lady is invited," he declared. "The prince wishes to dance and choose his bride." The stepsisters squealed with glee. "New dresses! New shoes! Oh, how the prince will adore us!" They clapped their hands and ran off to order fine gowns. Cinderella whispered, "Oh, Gus, wouldn't it be lovely to go just once?" Gus's whiskers twitched. He scurried to his secret hiding place, and with a proud squeak he pulled out the slippers he had made. "For you!" he squeaked. Cinderella gasped. "Oh, Gus, they're beautiful! They're the loveliest slippers I've ever seen! I wish I can wear them to the ball!" But before she could say more, her sisters stormed in. "You? To the ball? Ha! Who would want to see you in rags?" And they locked Cinderella in her room. That night, when the stepsisters had left for the ball, Cinderella sat crying. But then, poof! Her fairy godmother appeared. "You have been kind and patient, dear child," the fairy said. "Tonight you shall go to the ball." With a wave of her wand, Cinderella's torn dress became a gown of shimmering blue. Pumpkins became a golden carriage. Mice became horses. But the slippers stayed the same. For the fairy godmother saw how much love Gus had stitched into them. "They are perfect just as they are," she said with a smile. "Go, my dear," said the fairy godmother, "but remember this. The magic will last only until the last stroke of midnight. When the clock strikes 12, everything will return as it was." Cinderella nodded. She promised to be careful. And so, wearing Gus's slippers, Cinderella went to the ball. The palace was filled with music and laughter, but when Cinderella entered, the whole room fell silent. She shone brighter than the chandeliers. The prince bowed and asked her to dance, and they danced and danced and danced. But then the clock struck midnight. Cinderella ran from the palace. Down the grand steps she flew, her gown fluttering. But as she ran, one of Gus's slippers slipped off her foot. The prince picked it up gently. "I shall find her," he declared. "I shall find the one who wore this slipper." The next morning, the prince and his messengers went from house to house. "Every young lady must try on the slipper," they shouted, "for she who fits it shall be the prince's bride." At last they reached the house where Cinderella lived. The stepsisters rushed forward. "Me first! Me first!" But no matter how hard they squeezed, their feet would not fit. Gus heard the sisters whisper, "Don't let the girl from the shack out. She'll spoil everything." He scurried to Pip and Nib. "We must help Cinderella," he squeaked, and they quickly formed a plan. The three mice ran to Cinderella's room. They tugged and tugged until they pulled the other slipper out from under her bed. Then they darted off, carrying it between them. "Gus! Pip! Nib! Come back!" Cinderella cried, chasing after them. The prince asked, "Are there no other young ladies here?" The sisters opened their mouth to lie. But just then, Gus and his friends tumbled into the hall with the slipper, and right behind them came Cinderella, breathless from chasing her silly mice. The prince's eyes lit up. "It's you!" he said, surprised. He took the slipper and knelt before Cinderella. "May I?" She nodded shyly. He slipped it onto her foot. It fit perfectly, of course it did, because Gus had made it just for her. The very next day, the prince and Cinderella were married in the grandest wedding the kingdom had ever seen. Gus, Pip, and Nib had the best seats in the house. After the wedding, Cinderella leaned down and whispered, "Thank you, my little friend. Without you, none of this would have happened." Gus squeaked happily, his whiskers twitching. The palace tailor noticed the tiny mouse with the clever paws. "Why, those stitches on the princess's slippers are the finest I've ever seen," he said. "Would you like to be my little assistant?" From that day on, Gus worked beside the palace tailor. He nibbled loose threads, fetched spools of silk, and added tiny perfect stitches where no one else could reach. The gowns and suits he helped make became the most beautiful in the kingdom. But Gus always had time for his best friend. Every evening, after the sewing needles were put away, Cinderella would sit by the window with Gus on her lap, and she would tell him more stories of faraway lands. And Gus, the little mouse with the big heart, would listen and dream, dreaming of all the wonderful things still to be made. The end.